Hello everyone, I'm Katie Galligan, and for my final project, I administered the ASQ to a 48-month-old or a 4-year-old girl who, for confidentiality purposes, we will call Elsa. And I conducted the assessment with her mother present, who we will call Ariel for the purpose again of confidentiality. So to address the questions for the video, the implications of understanding the child's development for the field of social work are pretty important. She was a really on track, or I would even say developmentally advanced little girl. She was a pleasure to be around. Her language skills were extremely impressive, and she was just really sweet. And she had a younger brother who she interacted with in a very sweet and empathetic nature. The girl's mother happened to be a social worker who also is well educated on child development. And so I think the implications for being educated on a child's development and interacting with the child with that education has drastic implications for micro and macro interventions with parents. And I work with children and families. So for parents' education purposes and understanding child development and how to appropriately interact with their children, provide socialization for their children, it can really enhance the child's development, whether they come into the world with a set genetic predisposition for certain developmental delays. That's when those education and types of interventions can be really impactful. This girl did not have any predisposition to any behavioral health types of disorders, which we might see in the field, but she did come into the world with a set of genetic predispositions to a congenital heart disorder, which her mother has, and also a set of complications during birth that were pretty interesting that have continued to affect her. So she was breech in the womb because her legs were in a split position the entire time, and that has had an effect on her physical development. And so while her mother was very well educated on child development, she did have to negotiate some risk factors and some hazards to avoid some pretty serious surgeries for this girl during her development. And her husband, the girl's father, were successful in doing so. So again, the implications are pretty large when you're educated on children's development. And the ASQ is appropriate for the population. This young girl is an American girl. She's of Korean and English descent, or excuse me, German descent. And so she's raised in America, English speaking. And I also researched the ASQ, and in its third version, they're trying to be more culturally sensitive. It's available in Spanish and in French. This was administered in English, although the girl did share with me some Korean phrases and songs, which was pretty fun. I found it to be culturally sensitive and appropriate for the population, and given that I'm in Arizona in the Southwest, the fact that it's available in Spanish and found to be reliable and valid and culturally sensitive to that population is really important, because a large population that we will be working with are Spanish-speaking Mexican Americans in the Phoenix greater metropolitan area. I also really like that it involves the parents. I do think that there is potential for parents to be biased about their children's development, but ultimately, when they're that young, parents are the experts on their children. But I do think that it does give room for a little bias. You know, how well does your child speak? Well, I think they speak very well. So it depends on how educated the parent is, and I do think that some biases could mix in there, but statistically, very valid and reliable tool. What did I learn from this experience? I've administered the ASQ before, and I had never administered it to an older child of 4 years old. And so it was really interesting, the kind of back and forth conversation that I was able to have versus looking at the other developmental milestones of younger children. There was also an 18-month-old who was in the home, and so I was able to compare and contrast where they are developmentally compared to each other, their language skills, their fine and gross motor skills, and just how well the parent interacted with the children. And that was clear in the way that the children interacted with each other. And I think it's really, really important that parents socialize their children through a well-educated lens. So I learned a lot from doing this project.